Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're doing something a little different. We're going to tell the story of our planet's weather, but we're going to do it by looking at the data from just one single day. Today, March 15th, 2026. Let's see what it tells us. All right, so let's jump right in. We're going to zoom in on a few really fascinating things happening across the globe right now. And then we'll pull back to see how it all connects into one single planetary scale system. So our first story actually starts in Africa. But believe it or not, its impact is being felt thousands of kilometers away. Right now, a gigantic river of dust, lifted right out of the Sahara Desert, is flowing north over the Mediterranean Sea. And we're not just talking about a little haze that gives you a pretty sunset. No. When storm systems get mixed up with this dust, it literally falls out of the sky as this brownish, muddy rain that coats cars, buildings, pretty much everything, in a fine layer of desert sand. And this really shows you just how massive and long-lasting these events can be, right? This isn't something that happened overnight. This dust has been on an incredible journey for over 2 weeks, spreading further and further across the continent every single day. You know, it's easy to look at this and think, okay, so what? It's a bit of a mess to clean up. But the real effects, they are way more significant and, honestly, kind of surprising, especially when you look at our infrastructure. And this is where things get really fascinating. Researchers in Hungary found that on these high dust days, solar panel performance absolutely tanks. And it's not just from dust physically blocking the sun. It turns out those tiny particles high up in the atmosphere help create these thin, wispy clouds, dusty cirrus clouds that are super reflective. They bounce sunlight back into space before it even reaches the ground. Okay, let's hop over to a totally different part of the world and a completely different weather story. While all that dust is blanketing Europe, another drama is playing out in the warm waters of the Indian Ocean. So forecasters have their eyes on this area they've labeled Invest 94S. And an Invest is basically a baby storm. Think of it like a messy cluster of thunderstorms that has the potential to spin up into a full-blown tropical cyclone, but it's just not organized enough yet. And this right here is a classic forecasting headache. You've got these two forces fighting it out. On one side, the storm has all the fuel it needs. It's sitting over super warm ocean water. But on the other side, you've got this thing called high vertical wind shear. And you can just imagine that as a strong wind that's basically trying to blow the top off the storm, right? It just keeps it from getting organized and spinning up. So for today, March 15th, it looks like the bad conditions are winning. The official forecast is that the wind shear is going to tear this thing apart, and it'll probably just fizzle out into an open trough within the next 12 hours or so. Okay, so we've got a dust plume over Europe and a would-be storm in the Indian Ocean. Are these just two totally random, separate bits of atmospheric chaos? Or is there something bigger going on, some kind of hidden engine connecting them all? Well, it turns out a huge amount of the world's weather is influenced by this massive climate pattern out in the Pacific Ocean. You've probably heard of it, the El Niño Southern Oscillation, or just ENSO for short. This whole cycle of the Pacific warming up and cooling down can totally shape weather patterns across the entire globe. And according to the latest data, we're kind of in a transition period right now. A recent weak La Niña is fading out, and it looks like we're heading into what they call ENSO-neutral conditions. And what that often means is that global weather patterns can get a lot less predictable than when you have a really strong El Niño or La Niña driving the bus. This quote really hits the nail on the head. Forecasters actually have a name for this time of year, the spring predictability barrier. It's a well-known period of uncertainty when the long-range climate models just, well, they struggle. They're not as reliable. And that makes watching the day-to-day weather, just like we're doing now, even more important. Okay, so here's the bottom line. How does all this big picture stuff, the dust, the potential storms, the ocean temperatures, actually affect real life on the ground? You know, the forecast you check on your phone every morning. Let's take a look at how it all plays out today, on March 15th. So you go halfway around the world from our other stories, and you land in Nepal. The local weather service is issuing its daily forecast. And that prediction for rain, snow, and thunderstorms, that is a direct consequence of those huge atmospheric movements we've been talking about, pushing moisture right into the Himalayas. And you know, weather isn't just about whether you need an umbrella. It's also about the very air we breathe. And on this exact same day, cities as far apart as Kathmandu and Los Angeles are both dealing with unhealthy air quality. That's a direct result of local weather patterns, influenced by those larger global systems trapping pollutants close to the ground. And if you want to understand the sheer scale of what's happening right now, just look at this number. As of this morning, there are 1,687 official severe weather alerts active around the world. That's just incredible. And this isn't just happening in one or two spots. The list of countries you see here is just a tiny sample. We're talking heat waves, floods, high winds, snow, and behind every single one of those alerts, there's a global network of meteorologists working 24/7 to track these systems and keep people safe. So what's the big takeaway from our global tour today? It's that no weather event happens in a vacuum. It's all connected. The sand from Africa impacts solar power in Europe. The water temperature in the Pacific helps decide the fate of a storm in the Indian Ocean. It is all one big, dynamic planetary system. You know, when we take the time to really understand the incredibly complex story of just a single day, it's the first step to getting a handle on the much bigger, long-term changes that are happening to our home. What we've seen today, well, it's just one page in a much, much longer story.